Hello, adventurers, and welcome back to the Legend of Kelamentura recap series. It's been a few weeks since we last played, just because I needed some time off for my own sanity's sake, but we're back at it again. Back once again with the Renegade Massive. Sorry. Yep, there goes my brain already. Anyway, this time we're recapping Session 21, Fishing for Trouble. So to give people a recap as to where we left off last time, the party had gone off and wrapped up their adventures in the ice picks, had slain Yetis, encountered a Planetar, and encountered sort of a citizen of the dynasty that had fled effectively and was just in the middle of the ice picks, which is technically not sovereign territory of anything. It's just the wastes of like the Arctic. Had an encounter with him. And then returned to the town and learned about their next steps to go out and deal with the sea monsters that have been attacking the fishermen in the area. So it got all this stuff laid out in front of them, and this is their next plans. And we picked up with the party going and speaking with Thrane, Lord Thrane, who, you can just tell that the soul, it's kind of like the soul is being sucked out of this man, being stuck behind a desk trying to run the town. He's like, oh God, please just give me some excitement, please. This is, anybody who does any admin or paperwork, I'm sure you'll know that that's a bitch to do, and he has to do that constantly because he's running the place. So he's just, glad to have someone to talk to and, some excitement and, not just, we need more wood type thing. Have some exciting conversation, talk with his friends and old friends and what have you. So meet up with Thrane, had a bit of a conversation, tell him what all they went through, and talks about Lee, and return the journals that Lee had taken, which transpired were the journals of Desmond's father, Percival, Percival had been a soldier in the Menturuan War. It was about 15 years previous. He was killed during the war, so this journal and a ring and a few other bits and pieces are the only things that Desmond has of his father, so he's quite, sentimental and nostalgic about them. So I was very glad to have these items back in his possession, as you would be. I was incredibly pleased to have these items back and a little bit misty-eyed, and thanks the party very much. And as a reward, says, oh yeah, you've done this for me, and well, because you've given me these back, it says to Bjorn about the whole fisherman thing, going out to sea. Basically turns to Bjorn and says, okay, Bjorn, I know you've raised concerns previously about going out to sea, and gesturing to Bjorn, who's a full-plate paladin. Says, I can give you this on a loan, and removes his ring, which is a ring of water walking. This was my father's, so it's a loaner, but there you go. So, just kind of help Bjorn with his fears of being dragged overboard and drowning in his full plate. After that, Lowe raised, started asking, oh, would you have anything like a cast-off armor? At which point Thrane says, I'm not entirely sure, and then says, Geoffrey! And called for Geoffrey. Geoffrey being a very old elf, the manservant who serves the inhabitants of the Glacial Keep. He'd worked for the Charleston Kings for a couple of 100 years. So he's a fairly wizened old elf. Called him in, and went off and spoke to him, and then was able to, after a period of time, acquire a cast-off breastplate for both Lowe and Duchess, the two other party members who wear like heavy armor, the type of thing that would just drag you down to the bottom. So it was acquired that, and then also asked about a library. Because the party, they're going to go out, they know they're fighting sea serpents, that's been expressed to them previously. And says, well, we want to learn as much as we can. Is there a library? Geoffrey said, yes, there is. Brought them up there. Excuse me. Brought them up there. And the party spent the next good few hours reading, researching, and learning basically everything they could about sea serpents, which they rolled really well on. So they basically says, okay, you rolled so well, go into the monster manual, whatever's there, that's what you now know. And Lowe then did some research on red dragons, because red dragon has been mentioned a couple of times, like several times in the last couple of sessions. Oh, there's been a red dragon sighting, there's been a red dragon sighting. It's like, yeah, we get it, there's a red dragon I'm going to have to fight at some point. I want to learn about them. So learned a good bit about them. It wasn't quite the same role mechanically, so I didn't just say, okay, go to the monster manual, that's what you know. Picked a couple of bits out of the monster manual and says, there you go, that's what you now know. While they were doing that, Bjorn did a bit of independent research into his hammer, because Bjorn has learned a bit about his hammer, like bits and pieces over the last couple of weeks. You know, the hammer used to belong to a champion of the Scourge gods called Cain, and then he defected, and the hammer was reforged and has hidden power. He learned, a bit more about, the unlocked, how this potential of the hammer and the incredible damage it could deal when it was at its full potential, and linked to the worthiness of the wielder, whatever the fuck that means. And when he was reading this very dry, stuffy text, he learned the name of Barad-dûr's rival, a Scourge god by the name of Barok, B-A-R''OKH. So he finally learned that, which he's been, to be honest, he's been rolling investigation checks. He's been skirting on the edge of that for a very long time. And I was like, come on, roll high. There you go. He rolled really well. I think he got inspiration for it as well. So, yeah, he rolled fine old hand up to learn that's the name of the god. So I did all that. After a few hours of research and learning, and then Bjorn realizing we're going to fight effectively sea dragons, it's basically what sea serpents are, says, I'll be right back, ran into town, went to the open forge, collected the scales that he had commissioned from them previously, and asked them to make, like, pike grappling hooks, effectively, like boat hooks, kind of, if you will. But, ones that are going to do a bit more. You can, at a distance, stab a creature and lock into it, and then drag it towards you, or the boat towards it. Kind of just in a way to combat these creatures. Which overnight, the blacksmiths were able to do. They were able to take, existing pikes and grappling hooks and sort of forge them together and create, like, working overnight to create these grappling pikes, if you will. And also there's a small, I say a small, relatively small ship's anchor that was there. The lighting did a good bit to make it, wieldable. You can actually lift this thing up, but there's enough heft that it's still going to do a significant bit of damage. And attach chains to the pikes and the anchor, so that the Scallybags now have got like chains, grapples, that sort of a thing that they feel fairly confident with. These sort of somewhat improvised but well-made weapons to go against the sea serpents. So after the research and after Bjorn had done all this, kind of research and commissioning, came back and decided to go, fuck it. If we're going to go out tomorrow to set sail to sea to go off and do this, we'll have a bit of a... Ended up basically sitting with Thrane and just drinking until stupid o'clock. Just drinking all night, having the crack, like dinner and all the rest of it. Kind of just getting... kind of sort of with Thrane, giving him, a chance to blow off steam and talk to people and have the crack. Also for the party to... get a chance to speak with Jeffrey, the manservant, who is, as I said previously, he's a very old elf. He's seen some shit in his time. I talked with him and learned a few bits and pieces about, learned a bit about what Jeffrey has done and all the rest of it, and how he's served the people. He served this town for hundreds of years, and Jeffrey at one point twigged that Bjorn is a member of the Order of the Cleansing Hand. That's the paladin order that he's a part of. It was talking away and says, oh yeah, you're a member of this, and kind of bringing Bjorn's backstory into the story now. That was kind of brought up very briefly, but oh yes, I know. Oh, me and Cyrus are old friends from way back then. If you ever bump into him again, tell him I say hello. And a bit of a crack. Juggling contest between Achilles and Lowe, which completely fucking tanks. So that was a bit of crack, but that was that. Get the long rest. And get up the next day, breakfast with Thrane, collect collect the weapons that Bjorn had commissioned, and go off and find the Audacity, meet the crew. So we have Captain Tamon Broadback, Chuck, who's kind of like the enforcer. I'm not entirely sure what that would be on the ship. No, I say enforcer. You have the captain, and then the first mate, who is Sally. She's an elven sort of swashbuckler rogue. We have Chuck, who is this big fucking turtle. I think bosun, I think, would be the equivalent naval rank. I don't really know naval ranks that well, but if he was, I think that's what he would be. Like a sergeant, if you will. That's Chuck. And then we have Chris and Shaw, who are half-orc twins, just regular crewmen. And then they have this gnome spellcaster, Gary. The 6 of these people, they're able to crew and sail this relatively small ship pretty well. There's a lot of experience in this crew, so able to get onto the ship, get it set, get ready for sail, and head out into the deep blue yonder. Of course, whenever they get into the ship, with a healthy dose of paranoia that's been induced in the party for the past good number of sessions, they give a Bjorn and Achilles give a fairly what they believe to be a very thorough once over. There's nothing hidden, dangerous, intentional or otherwise, no traps that have been set on the ship, so they don't feel like they're walking into a scourge trap. Did fairly well, haven't found anything. And Lowe did a detect magic. Apart from the magical items that were on his party members, the only other magic item was something that was within the captain's quarters, something enchanted. Haven't gone down, haven't found out what it is yet, but that's what they found out. And there was a couple of days of sailing. So during that time of sailing, Bjorn took some time with the first mate Sally. Kind of went through, getting comfortable with fighting on a moving deck of a ship, getting used to that. Talked over the weapons that they had brought with them, and so that could be quite useful. That's a good idea, actually, and so stowed them on the ship. Stowed them on the deck of the twins. Seemed pretty interesting. These could be very useful. And Chuck as well. So that was a sort of a, bit of a sort of back and forth type thing. And at one point, Achilles, Tamon, there's conversations with the captain, and Achilles talked about, I was a veteran in the war, and I worked with Thrane's father, and now we did some seriously sneaky shit during the war. And Achilles used his panache ability to basically go, come on, what happens if he stays? Z, come on, tell us a few stories. Basically reveals that Percival and Tamon were kind of like a spec ops group. That makes, sort of going behind enemy lines, conducting targeted raids against specific targets, and doing some black ops shit effectively. As I describe this, is something like where you get the SOG teams from Vietnam and the PBRs. I think they're called SOG teams. Basically special forces. And Tamon was like, yeah, this is my ship, this is the captain, so we used to, we would sail through blockades, or, we're a small ship, so we can sail through a blockade undetected where bigger ships would not. Drop off troops at vital points, pick people up. Just some real sneaky, cool spy war shit. That's what Tamon is. So Tamon knows a thing or two about fighting and all the rest of it. So that's that. And then on day 3, going to bed on the night of day 2 versus in the morning of day 3, the captain basically says, yeah, we're in the area where these attacks have happened, so be alert. We had 2 watches over the course of the night. Both watches, the perception checks were very high. Thankfully and mercifully, nothing happened. It was an uneventful night. And on kind of mid-morning, day 3, everyone keeping an eye out, Achilles was able to spot 2 large moving things in the sea. One off the port and one off the starboard sides of the ship. Called these out to Gary, who called down to the captain, who then announced to everybody else, all right, everybody, here we go. There's 2 of them. And the party went, what, 2? What the fuck? Shortly after, these 2 sea serpents erupted out of the water, one on either side of the ship. Going, okay, this is going to be fun. And then 4 other smaller humanoid creatures leapt up onto the deck. Described as being, female humanoid, slightly hair and clothes slick and wet and all the rest of it. So yeah, the party now know exactly what they're up against. Well, so they know, okay, this is where we are. We're on the deck of a ship. We have a sea serpent on the other side of us, and we have these other weird-looking creatures. And that's where we ended up the last. That's where we ended the last session. So going into the next session, which is session 22, we're kicking it off with a big old monster fight on the high seas. I've got everybody to roll initiative, so we now know. I now know. Go. So if you pick up next time and go right combat, you're starting this off. I'm kicking off with, surprisingly, Ariadne or Monk, who Ariadne and Titanus, they were both on holidays this week, so they couldn't join us, unfortunately. Although I think the timings kind of worked out well because the combat could get pretty dicey. So hopefully next time we'll have a full house and we'll have some hopefully pretty fun and decent combat. But that's going to be in another couple of weeks. Map is sitting ready to go, and I'm raring to go. This encounter's been sat with me for a while, and I'm really looking forward to it. So until next time, adventurers, stay safe, and see you next time. See ya.